Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly. On this episode, Drew Price of Masterclass Angling returns to the podcast. He updates us on the most recent fishing season on Lake Champlain, and we discuss the release of his first book, Favorite Flies for Vermont, 50 Essential Patterns from Local Experts. I think you're really going to enjoy this one. But before we get to the interview, just a couple of housekeeping items. If you like the podcast, please tell a friend and subscribe and leave us a rating and review in the podcast app of your choice. It really helps us out. And finally, a shout out to our sponsor, Trout routes. We all know streams and rivers are getting crowded, and chances are you're not the only one at your local access point. Get away from the crowds and busy gravel lots by using Trout Routes Pro with over 350,000 access points mapped across 50,000 trout streams and much more. Trout Routes has all the data you need to help you find angling opportunities that others will overlook. Up your game and download the app today. Use code ARTFLY20, ARTFLY20, all one word, for 20% off of your Trout Routes Pro membership at maps.troutroutes.com. Now, on to our interview. Well, Drew, welcome back to the Articulate Fly.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to our conversation tonight. And before we kind of dive into your new book, how was last year's fishing season on Lake Champlain?
It was spectacular. It was great. It was really interesting. We didn't get a super high water spring, and we didn't get a lot of water, which is different than the prior two summers. And we ended up with an almost record low lake level on the lake, and which is really cool. You know, I think in the last podcast I really emphasized what a dynamic system Lake Champlain is, and this is another example of it. You know, I'm used to having fluctuation of 5 to 6 feet throughout the season, but I have never seen a lake this low, which showed a lot of structure. And helped me understand, like, wow, I know why the fish are hanging in that spot. So it definitely gave a very different perspective, and a lot of guys are out with drones. So there's a lot of really cool drone footage. So even the spots that I wasn't able to check out, there's videos that I can use to help me figure out what's going on in different places. So yeah, it was a really interesting season. But the fishing was spectacular. Bowfin were everywhere. It was actually one of the best bowfin years I've seen in a long time, which was really heartening. Yeah, it was a fantastic season. The Lakers were on fire in November. Had a great guide season. I was really surprised, happily surprised, at how many people hit me up for Laker trips towards the end of the year, which is great. It was a fantastic year.
Yeah, I understand that they're good smoked, right?
You know, I wouldn't know. I am deathly allergic to fish.
Funny fact, right?
It's a funny fact. It is a funny fact. You know, my whole life ends up revolving around fish in some way or another. Not only am I definitely allergic to fish, but I'm also Pisces. So, you know, it's one of those things. It's kind of even if I try to escape it, I can't.
Very neat. And, you know, we had the chance, I guess, to meet in person a few weeks ago in Edison. And yep. I think that was the first time you'd gone to that show. How was the show for you?
That was great. That was the first time I attended it the year prior, last year. But that was the first time as a tire and presenter, and I was signing my book. It was great. I had a lot of fun. It was a little bit of a bummer. Had to cut it short. We got hit with a big blizzard, and most people took off on Saturday, so didn't really get to hang around for Sunday. I chose to be cautious, and I drove home in the middle of the night, and I'm glad I did, because the roads would have been an absolute nightmare to get home. I'd much rather have a tiring 5-hour drive than a 12-hour nightmare in bad driving conditions. So, but it was great. Got to see a lot of people. Had a great presentation. I did seasons of Lake Champlain fly fishing New England's West Coast. which was cool. It was well attended. So yeah, and got to see a lot of folks I don't get to see, including yourself.
Yeah, very, very neat. Yeah, I think I told you before we started recording, I feel like I've kind of pushed my luck on the travel front because I
Right.
successfully made it to and from Edison and to and from Bob in the Hood in Michigan with 2 weather events both weekends.
Yeah. Yeah. Dodged a bullet.
Yeah, so I'm sure it'll come back to haunt me at some point. But you know, kind of funny. Your book, Favorite Flies for Vermont, dropped, I don't know, right before Edison, and I was kind of curious. Where did the idea for the book come from?
Well, that I have a huge thank you to send out to Tom Rosenbauer. Tom and I were fishing a few years ago, and he was in the front of my boat. And we were push pulling along this bay looking for gar and carp. And he just kind of put his head over his shoulder. He's like, you ever thought about writing a book? And I was like, yeah, I have. And he's like, I got this opportunity, but would you be interested in writing a book on flies for Vermont? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. Man, the rest is history. He put me in touch with Jay Nichols um, and got it together. And took a couple of years to took a little bit longer than I originally expected, but I'm really pleased with the results.
Yeah, that's really neat. I think that's part of. I guess they've got all those like series books, like Flies of Pennsylvania. It sounds like that book is part of that series, right?
Yes, it is. It's the latest book in that series. The first book was by Mike Valla, and he did Favorite Flies for the Catskills, and that was Mike's first book. Mike just put out his 10th book, which is a fly fishing guide for Vermont. That came out the week before Edison. And I'm in that book quite a bit. Mike and I have become pretty good friends, and he helped me with my book as well. So that was just kind of one of those nice happy happenstances, That was yeah, it's a great book series that Stackpole has out, and there's, I don't know how many are in the series, but it's definitely a great book series.
Very neat. And so, who did you write the book for?
Well, I mean, it's a book for really for fly tires, also fly anglers. Really, it's targeted for people in Vermont or traveling to Vermont. But I think a lot of the flies in there are pretty universal. I've certainly caught fish with the flies that I put in there all over the place. I've got most of the book is trout flies. That's, I think, 40 something out of the 50 plus flies that are in the book are trout flies. But there's a lot of those patterns are kind of crossover patterns. They will certainly work for bass or panfish. And then, there's a number of warm water flies, including one of my bowfin flies, and I've got a gar fly in there as well. But, the target audience is really anybody who likes to tie flies or is interested in what works in Vermont.
Yeah, I think there's also, too, maybe a nice historical angle, too, because Vermont and New England is so important to our fly fishing heritage that, there's a lot of pattern history in the book, too.
There really is. And that was something that was super, super important to me. We some of the first commercial fly tying that ever took place at the Orvis Company. Mary Marbury Orvis, or Orvis Marbury. I can't remember at the moment, but she started actually having the patterns written down, and they started having people tying them in Manchester, Vermont. So, the industry kind of owes a huge debt of gratitude to Mary for her, contribution to what we do. But from there, there's some fun patterns that are in there, like the Spirit of Pittsford Mills. which is a neat dry fly pattern. Gave me an opportunity to talk a little bit about some presidential history in Vermont because Furnace Brook in Pittsford was President Eisenhower's favorite trout stream in the United States. And there's a kind of a funny story about him on in that fly pattern. And it also gave me an opportunity to talk about kind of an important, certainly a local figure, Ray Plumley, who was a longtime fly fishing personality around here. He was the longtime manager of the Classic Outfitters, which was a fly shop in South Burlington. And Ray got the Governor Aiken bucktail in the legislature as the official fishing fly of the state of Vermont, which is, kind of a really cool thing. And it got a great historic photo in there of Vermont Governor Aiken up at Quimby Country in the Northeast Kingdom. It's a great pattern, still a really effective pattern for landlocks, and it's a great trolling pattern that a lot of people will use. It's very smelt-like. And I also got to put in one of Ray's patterns. Ray passed away about this time last year from long time illness, and it was a great way to memorialize Ray. So.
Yeah, very neat. And can you kind of give folks I've been lucky enough to look at it in advanced copy, but can you kind of give folks kind of an overview of the book?
Yeah, I mean, it's I give kind of a brief introduction of what's up with Vermont fly fishing, Vermont's kind of known for trout, but we're probably not the greatest trout state in the country. I'm not really giving away any secrets there. We have a lot of good trout fishing, but it's not like the really consistent fishing that you'll find in places like Pennsylvania or Colorado. We don't have super consistent hatches. So one thing that you see a lot in there's a lot of great patterns for brook trout, because a lot of fly anglers in the summertime will hit the blue lines, and there's some great blue line opportunities in Vermont. We have a ton of brook trout. They're not many of them are super big, but there's a lot of them to be caught. And there's a lot of streamer patterns because a lot of people like catching those bigger fish, especially big browns. But it also gave me an opportunity to talk about the warm water options that we have here. A lot of incredible bass fishing in this state. And then, the resource that I love so much, Lake Champlain, and really kind of sharing, like, we've got something really special here, that fly anglers really haven't tapped into a whole lot. I'm hoping to bring it to a little bit more prominence. I'd love to see more people coming in and checking out Lake Champlain, because we have world-class bass fishing on Lake Champlain. It's one of the top 5 bass lakes in the country, according to Bassmasters, and it has been for the past 30 years. It's certainly world-class bowfin fishing, which is it seems kind of funny, but I've got a client who's got almost every IGFA tippet class record, and almost all of those were caught on Lake Champlain. The book really gave an opportunity to showcase the wide variety of options that we have here, and the flies that will get it done.
Yeah, very neat. And I guess in terms of, layout, it's basically a chapter per pattern, and it's a fly tying book, but it's not a step-by-step book. So it's pictures of the fly and the recipe, and then you have a several page write-up kind of on history and background, right?
Right. And one of the things that was a lot of fun is talking to the fly tyers and kind of getting their story. Not only their story about their fly, but their story, how they got into fly fishing, and like what it is that drives them, and what it is that drove them to create the pattern that they sent to me. And some of these people are people I know. Some of these people are total strangers. And it's really great. We have a wide variety of people who are interested in catching fish with flies here. And I think the thing that was kind of the most interesting is the number of people who sent me patterns and were just like, I am so sorry for how ugly that is. And they were kind of talking their flies down a little bit. Like, I wish I'd have spent more time making it neater. And I just said, like, Vermont fly tyers are really pragmatic. They want to just tie as many as they can, as quickly as they can, so they can go out and catch fish. And as most of us who have been fly fishing for any length of time knows, that a perfectly tied fly isn't always the one that the fish want. The fly that's been beat up and missing some legs or whatever, that's the one that the fish really like. So I really enjoyed getting all of those patterns. Man, I even got a couple of flies that still had some tippet on them. Because they were raiding the fly tyers had raided their own box because they didn't have time to get a new one tied for me, and I really appreciate that. I think that's kind of fun, and it's a fun part of the story too.
Yeah, absolutely. And so tell me a little bit about kind of your writing and editing experience. What was it like? Did you like it? Was it like pulling teeth?
Well, it was. Sometimes for me, it can be really hard to focus. And that, I think, it was one of the hardest things. And one thing that really made it challenging, I had a partner that was dealing with a severe illness while I was wrapping this book up. And so I was kind of a caregiver and working a full-time job and guiding while finishing the book. So I had a lot going on towards the end. And I'm really proud of myself for pulling it through, pulling it off. And I got to really give a lot of credit to Jay to kind of putting a fire under my feet a little bit to get it done. It was, I would sit down in the morning and just hammer away at it. And then whenever I was able to get on the phone with people, because it was, it was tough to try to get a hold of people to do interviews, like doing a face-to-face interview can be really challenging, especially, all over the state. So I did a lot of my interviews over the phone and people would mail me their flies. And in some cases, people who weren't able to mail me their flies were described what the fly looked like, and I would actually tie up a few and send them pictures and say, hey, does this look right? And they'd say either yes or no, and I'd go back to the drawing board if I needed to. And that was kind of a fun part of the process, and that kind of let me know, or help me understand what was going on in their tying the patterns, if that makes sense. It was kind of fun, and it was really, I never had any short calls with any of the fly tyers. As most of us know, once you get a couple of fly tyers or fly anglers on the phone, you start telling fish stories and you start talking about the flies, and the half an hour phone call you were going to have that was going to be just a quick interview is 3 hours later, like, I gotta go, I gotta get this written down, which is great. But I've got a whole notebook filled with handwritten notes, because that's how I did a lot of it. Keeping track of what flies I had. I was basically making my own charts to make sure that I had the fly done. I had the photo of the fly because I did all the fly photography, which was a really cool part of this. So, learning how to do macro photography, was super fun and a skill I'd like to apply again. I definitely can see myself, writing more books and articles about fly tying. Um, these are great skills to have. And I've got a really great, setup to, photograph flies now. So that's, definitely a lot of fun, to play around with. But it definitely got me thinking about writing more. And, I have, I've got an article in a major magazine that will be coming out, later this spring on Bowfin and Lake Champlain. So, definitely something to keep an eye open for. And pretty excited about that. I've wanted to do that for a while, and hopefully it leads to more and more writing opportunities.
Very neat. What was the editing process like with the folks at Stackpole?
Oh, it was great. They would send me, edits and, what they thought should be done. And I'd say, well, yeah, or, let's look at it. I think it needs to be more like this or that. And, they'd agree. We'd go back and forth. And it was cool because, they'd send me, a copy in Microsoft Word, and they'd have the notes, and I'd make the corrections, or I'd correct their, corrections, in some cases. Sometimes it was, like a minor spelling correction. And as we know, like some fly names, are intentionally misspelled, right? And that happened a couple of times. Yeah, but it was kind of a neat process, and it was a lot of fun to dig into the history, and keeping the citation list. There's a lot of great books that I used, and that's all in the book as well. Definitely something to check out. The Atherton flies, are great, historical flies for Vermont. And I know that's not necessarily part of the editorial process, but that was also part of the process of writing the book is using references and going back and looking at the historic flies, and the history. And that was super, super cool. Super cool.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because I noticed in, reviewing the book that you really did go out of your way to give credit about patterns, right?
Yeah.
And, that's not common. And certainly, you went to, pretty great strokes, to have citations and things, which I thought, I know a lot of people that complain about having their patterns copied will appreciate that, right?
Yeah. Right. Right. I mean, there's definitely some patterns in there. There's a couple of there's several patterns, from, there's two patterns from our friend Blaine Chocklett. I have so much respect for Blaine, and they're variations of Blaine's patterns that I came up with myself for fishing around here. But like, those are Blaine's patterns, and I tweaked them to use around here. But I got to give credit to Blaine. And then there's a variation of the Clouser minnow that I use for lake trout, that glows in the dark. Super fun fly, and it's really fun to be out, in the dark in November on Lake Champlain and using a glow in the dark fly and watching it disappear as it's coming back to the boat. That's there's nothing quite like that. Definitely a lot of appeal there, but that's a Bob Clouser pattern that I made a variation of. And I mean, we know, if you look through a fly catalog these days, how many different variations of the woolly bugger out there. And, yes, it's a variation. It might have a little deer hair on there, but it's a woolly bugger, and I like to make sure that people, have fly patterns attributed to them when they have done something unique. And both Bob Clouser and Blaine Chocklett, deserve that credit. And along, the same lines is like all the variations or all the patterns in the book. Like the pattern of Ray Plumley's that I mentioned earlier is a combination, a variation of the Hornberg that he created for fishing in Vermont. But I properly attribute that to the originator of the Hornberg. It is a variation, and I think it's important for us to acknowledge that as fly tyers and anglers.
Yeah, absolutely. There's not a lot of original stuff anymore for sure. And it's important to give people credit. I'm super curious too, because, there are 53 patterns in the book and some people
Yep.
have more than one. But do you have like a memorable tire wrangling story from getting a pattern in the book?
There's a few. There's a few patterns that didn't make the book. Because I would there was a couple of guys I went back and forth with, and I was like, hey, like I want to get you in the book. I want to support your guide service, or whatever you're trying to do. And like, send me your stuff so that I can put you in here. We've had a great conversation. And I had one guy who, oh yeah, I'll get that in the mail. I'll get that in the mail. All right, well, get in the mail. I need to, I need this because it's, my editor's breathing down my neck. I need to have this as soon as possible. Oh, it's in the mail this morning. I never got the flies. That guy never got, he's not in the book, and I have, it's like, hey, it's a bummer. And I tried, I did my part. Like, I don't know where your pattern is. So, I didn't put you in there. But most people who said that they would contribute a fly contributed flies. Which is great. One of the guys that was one of the most challenging to buckle down and get to talk to me was Tom Rosenbauer. But he's a super busy guy, as you might imagine. And he and I went down and fished with our mutual friend Rowan Lytle down in Connecticut for carp. So we had a 4-hour car ride, and I just pulled out a notebook and I was like, all right, Tom, here's our chance. Let's do this. So I just kind of grilled him as we were driving, which I think is probably the best way to do it. And that was really fun, just like asking him, like, how did you come up with that emerger that everybody loves? And it's a great pattern. That's one of the best emerger patterns around is his CDC rabbit's foot emerger, and great story about it in the book. And he's such a great guy, and he's really just one of those guys that he walks the walk that he talks about. You know what I mean? He fishes, and he just loves to fish. So the Tom Rosenbauer that you see, that you hear on his podcast, is the Tom Rosenbauer that is out on the water, which that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's kind of funny because you mentioned earlier that, most of the patterns in the book are trout patterns. And, you're making your living now kind of on the exotic stuff, the non-trout species. What was it like returning to your roots and writing about so many trout flies?
Oh, it was great. I mean, I've got a couple of trout flies in there myself. I fish trout. And I will even occasionally guide for trout. But I definitely try to there's so many people here in Vermont that guide for trout that I kind of wanted to separate myself from that. But it's really fun to see the variations of trout patterns. And, sometimes it was just like, a good friend of mine put in this Tenkara CDC dry fly, and it's just a simple, fun little fly, and that's such a difference from a couple of the other like super realistic patterns that are in the book. Thomas Ames put in a pattern for like he just put out the new Eastern Hatch Guide, which is another fantastic book from Stackpole. But he's such a an entomology freak. And looking at the details and like why he looked at why is he having such trouble getting these trout to eat emergers, and realizing that this is a fly that's trapped in the surface film, and a soft tackle pattern is going to be the thing that does it. And then he also did put in an emerging caddis pattern, which is just a hyper realistic snapshot of an emerging caddis in a very particular point in their emergence. And what a contrast, those flies. The CDC, this really messy, buggy looking CDC thing that only uses like two materials, compared to Tom's like realistic snapshot in the emergence of an insect. I think that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, very, very neat. And so, as you kind of reflect back, on the book writing process, Drew, what was the kind of the greatest challenge or surprise for you?
The biggest challenges was like maintaining my focus, especially when the weather got nice and the fish were biting. Like it's hard. It was hard to pull myself away from the water and just making the time to, to focus in on what I need to get done. And I did a lot of writing over the winter. But as it got nicer and nicer, it was harder and harder for me to maintain focus on writing when I knew the fish were biting. I think that was the biggest challenge for me.
Yeah, got it. And what did you learn about yourself going through this entire process?
This is something I think I relearned about myself. I do really enjoy writing, and I'm a very good writer. And it's something that I need to explore in myself more, and that's something that I'm trying to do more. And dig into that part of me, because I've got a lot of great stories to tell. I've got a lot of great information to share, the written word is something that like I hold dear, and it's something that it's an art form that I worry about, especially with all the AI these days, and how easy it is to pump something out and just put something into Chat GPT and have it just crank stuff out for you. And I would much rather sit down and work through how to write something myself. And that's something I would encourage others to do as well.
Yeah, very neat. Yeah, it's funny. We can some next time we're together, we can have a couple beers and talk about the AI stuff, because it's something that kind of finding that line as a creator. But it's interesting too to hear you say that, because when I interview authors, they come in two flavors. Either they're so deeply traumatized by the writing experience that they'll never write another book, or they're like you and you're like, hey man, like I kind of like this, and I'm going to try magazine articles and write more books.
Right. And, I've written magazine articles and newspaper articles in the past. And, I just need to once I have some success with something, it really keeps me, it gets me fired up to do more of that, and but I can also see how it can be very traumatizing. I worked in education for over 10 years, and helping kids learn how to write, and I recognize the trauma that writing can bring out in people, and it's real. It's definitely real. There's nothing worse than a kid in 7th grade who doesn't want to write. That's pulling teeth.
Yeah, although I would say, so my boys are 23 and 17. I think we've done a lot to make English in particular not a very fun subject, right?
Right.
Like they certainly don't do as much as like I did when I was in school. They don't read as many books and they don't write as much. But, the stuff where like it's more important to like annotate the bejesus out of a book than to read it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Give a kid Tale of Two Cities and grade him on like how many different highlighter colors he put in the book. And I'm not so sure we're accomplishing what we set out to.
No, I fully agree with that. And at the same time, we mentioned AI, and I got out of education before Chat GPT really became, I know people in education now, and I say this very intentionally, where it's kind of become a problem in education, where you don't have to write now if you don't want to, but plagiarism is a big thing, and I had one thing that kept me from really writing for a while is I submitted I was contacted by a writer from a New England magazine. I'm not going to name the writer. I'm not going to name the magazine, but he asked me a bunch of questions about fly fishing on Lake Champlain. And I wrote a bunch of stuff, and he literally took what I wrote him, and he just changed the pronouns from I to he. And basically plagiarized most of the article on my writing. So while I think it is tough for kids to get really excited about writing, because they have to annotize, put in a lot of notes and put in a lot of references and put in those proper citations. At the same time, when you've been plagiarized, I get it, and we don't want kids plagiarizing stuff. So I think it's a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah, 100%. And so, if folks are excited and they want to get a copy of your book, where can they go in general, but also too, you're not, you were at Edison. I don't think you're doing any of the fly fishing shows. If folks wanted a personalized copy, where should they go?
Well, I mean, I book a trip with me, and I'd be happy to sign a book for you there. I'm not traveling around too much. I don't have a website set up to sell personalized copies. What I would encourage most anglers to do is to go to your local fly shop and have them order for them. Or if they don't already have it in stock. I know a lot of places around here, Fly Rod Shop and Stowe has been flying through it, and I've been signing copies for them quite a bit. And if you happen to be in Ferrisburg, Vermont, the place that I work at, Gill Feathers Fine Provisions, we're opening a new shop, and this month we just moved and renovated an old Methodist church, beautiful space. And there's signed copies there, and I'd be happy if you come into my work spot and get yourself one of the best lobster rolls in New England. I'd be happy to personalize a book for you there. But it's also available on Amazon and any other place that you can find books online. And it's been selling very well, from what I understand.
Well, that's good. Yeah. And so like any new, TU meetings in New England or anything like that where folks can find you?
Yeah. I mean, I did a did Mad Dog Trout Unlimited in December. I did a talk at Central Vermont Trout Unlimited last month. I will be tying some of the patterns, some of the nymph patterns from the book for the Fly Tires Club in Rutland in March.
Got it. I'll hop out on the internet and try to drop that in the show notes for you.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'll send you a link to it. Had a lot going on in recent days, and sometimes this becomes a blur.
No, I completely understand. Traveling 2 weeks to shows is fun, but the reentry sometimes can be a little difficult.
Right. And like I said, we just moved the shop that I work at, and that's been a big process. So it's just been go. And I'm in the midst of writing something entirely different that's not fly fishing related that I'll keep as a bit of a surprise in my back pocket for when it comes out.
Yeah, very neat. And so, before I let you hop this evening, Drew, anything else you want to share with our listeners?
If you're interested in fly fishing on Lake Champlain or in, the surrounding areas, hit me up as soon as possible. I am booking fast. I have limited dates. The season is going to be coming up really quickly. Things will, as soon as the ice starts melting off the lake, we'll have lake trout going, and it won't be long before bowfin and pike and bass and all the critters that are around are hopping. It's such an amazing place. It's such a beautiful place. The multi-species aspect of Lake Champlain is something really special that I think every fly angler should try out at some point in their travels. So, hit me up at masterclassangling.com or look for me on Instagram at masterclassangling.
Very neat. And I will drop links to all that stuff in the show notes. And I'll also drop a link to our first interview. So if folks want to learn more, because we took a deeper dive into the fishery, and I think we spent most of our time, on your obsession with bowfin, but you've got drum, smallmouth, lake trout. I mean, you've got pretty much anything with fins.
Right.
And you target them all. And like you said, you're not averse to guiding for trout, but you kind of wanted to create a unique lane. So there's some great opportunities if folks can get up to you.
Yeah. I mean, we've got 88 different species in the lake, and I would say, close to 30 of them are available to fly anglers, which is, that's really cool. I've caught as many as 15 different species in a day on a fly on the lake. So it's, I think that's just, really a lot of fun. It's a really unique body of water with a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, very, very neat. And Drew, I appreciate you spending some time with me this evening, and hopefully our paths will cross again before Edison next year.
Absolutely. We got to get you up here and put you in the boat one of these days.
Yeah, sounds like a plan. Take care.
Thanks, Marvin.
Well, folks, we hope you enjoyed the interview as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Don't forget to check out the links to all of this episode's sponsors in the show notes. Tight lines, everybody.